Hi, guys. No, you are not imagining things. I am back again with another interview. And I'm on this little tangent right now because I've joined Chris Harder's For the Love of Money Mastermind, and I am so grateful for it, but I've also been able to connect to some of the most amazing, amazing people. And Marlo Ellis, who's going to be jumping on here, and I'm glad to see a lot of ladies jumping on because you need to hear this woman's story and how she assists other women in sharing their story. Hi, Nancy D. Deb Bryce. Good to see people jumping on. I am going to. There is Marlo. This woman is a powerhouse, and I'm going to do very little talking and most mostly asking because that's hi.
Hi,
How are you?
I'm amazing.
There we go. Okay.
Hi.
Hi. Well, it's good to.
Yay. Okay, it's working.
It's where, yeah. So what I've learned is with the whole headphones thing. Um, oh, my dad just jumped on. Hey, Pop.
Hey, Dad. I love when dads jump on.
I do too.
My dad always creeps on my Facebook lives,
And my
and
future
then he sends me
mother-in-law
little.
jumped on too.
Oh, did she? Yay.
Yeah.
Hi. The whole fam is
Whole
there.
family's
Love
here.
it.
Well, first, it's really good to see you.
It's so nice to see you. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Just
Good.
enjoying a beautiful Friday evening in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And you've been running around. Where are you now?
I'm in Calgary.
Back
So,
home.
Calgary, Alberta. Yeah, I'm home. I'm home. It was California to Calgary. And let me tell you, it is frosty here. So it's
Yeah.
quite the change.
Yeah.
But I've just been, hunkering
Well,
down.
I'm real excited for you to share, with my audience tonight. And, we actually, I'm glad that we had the opportunity to sit and talk at dinner um,
Yes.
that second night because we realized we had more in common and, our network marketing past and our fitness past. Like we,
Yeah.
we have a lot of
And we didn't even
similarities.
really get to like dive into it. It was just, I think by the last night of Mastermind, I was just like,
Yeah, it's and
it was
it's
like
gonna continue to be that way.
always, yeah. So, but yeah, we have so many. I feel like we do have a lot of similarities in our path. And
Absolutely.
so this is such a great, I'm super excited about the conversation. So
Me
thank you for
too.
having me on. Totally
Oh,
grateful.
my pleasure and grateful to have you. And just want to say hi to Amanda, Annette, and all. I I
I can't see anybody popping on.
I know,
Sorry.
and it's you'll be able to see it after,
You do it for me.
but I, I
Okay.
I made the announcement that I wanted a lot. I said for all the ladies, you need to hear this message, and
Yeah. All ladies in the house.
Carla Preston just jumped
Oh,
on,
Carla.
and
Carla's actually one of my graduates from Seats to Stage.
oh,
So
beautiful.
she is somebody who knows what I'm be talking about.
All right, so
Hi, Carla.
before we get into what you're doing now,
Yeah.
I always like to go back before we talk about where we are presently. So, for a lot of my audience that does not know who Marlo Ellis is, could you please just do a brief introduction, talk
Sure.
about some of your past, your history, and kind of what led you up to what you're doing right now, and then we can dive in.
Absolutely. So I am the founder and visionary of the Uncommon Woman, which is a movement for women who have incredible stories, painful stories that they are either presently in or painful story that they have actually turned into their power stories. And so as well as being the founder and visionary of that movement, I am also a speaking coach. And the reason that I became a speaking coach was that the Uncommon Woman movement is actually a movement for women who have these stories. And the goal, the vision for this movement is that women actually take these stories and share them with others in the hopes of helping or healing or saving or changing lives, right? But in order to do that, you have to be able to share your story. You have to be able to stand on the shoulders of your story. And we all
Mm,
know that when we're in a story, that's a lot different than being able to turn around and talk about it,
huge,
right? Like we've all
huge.
been there. So in 2011, 2012, I was in an abusive relationship. And in that time in my life, because I was so ashamed and I really didn't know anything about abusive relationships because it was not part of my past. It was not part of my cycle. It just kind of showed up when I had a crack in my foundation, and it showed up, and I really didn't know what to do with it. And so I isolated, and I allowed that whole experience to just kind of like fester in my soul. And it got really dark, and I left when my life was threatened, and I left that relationship. And then of course I went into the whole, how could you ever put yourself in this place? What kind of a strong woman, because I was a gym owner, a leader in my community. I had been a teacher for 10 years. I've always been this strong person. How could somebody who's so strong find themselves in such a crappy situation where they were, really kind of living all of the things that they untaught, right? Yeah. So I would teach people to be strong and to be resilient and to not allow people to cross their boundaries. And there I was in my own life doing that very thing. And so it was really hard for me to step forward and say, okay, here's my truth, is that I actually was in a situation. So once I left and got myself out, all of a sudden, all these women started coming to me and sharing with me their stories. And of course, we are what we attract, right? So these women were coming to me and telling me their stories, and they somehow felt really safe and comfortable talking to me about it. Well, the reason was because I understood, and I didn't shame them, and I didn't judge them, and I just held space for them. So fast forward 3 years, the Uncommon Woman movement was born. I just basically made a promise with God that said, I can get through this, because I had some really dark times in my life. If I can just get through this, I promise that I'll make this my life work, to give women a space and a safe platform to share. So that's truly the foundation of everything that I do. And the part that we're going to talk about today is just the bridge that creates the space for them to go from having the story to sharing the story, because those are two different things.
I love that. And you said something really impactful that I want you to go back and touch on again. And instead of living in your story, it's more about sharing and standing on the shoulders of your story. And I think we all have a story that we either live by or live from. And when you live by your story, and if it's not a good one, you end up staying in what I called Groundhog's Day, where it's the same day recreated over and over again. Right. And in the first book that I wrote a few years ago called Good Guys Always Win, I shared some of the experiences that I had in my life that a lot of people would have read through them and they're like, man, how did you push through? And I think each person processes and handles situations differently, but I always found myself in an unconscious situation where I always found a way. And there's two types of people. There's people that find a way, and then there's people that find a facilitator to help them kind of move past that, which is obviously what you're doing now. Mm-hmm. So before the movement was created, what would you say was your most impactful moment, aside from having the strength and the understanding that you needed to leave this relationship? What was the most impactful moment for you post leaving that relationship that really spurred everything that's going on right now?
Ooh, that's a juicy question, because I've actually had something come up recently that I've been sharing that's been a new level of my story and a new level of my vulnerability. And that is that when I walked away, I realized that I had become an abuser. So it's like when you're living with an alcoholic, you become codependent, right? And so something that I've learned is that when you're in an abusive relationship, you become an abuser yourself, whether it's abusing yourself through the dialogue. But I actually became an abuser. So I was emotionally abused, but I felt like I wasn't being seen and heard, that I didn't exist. So I started doing things like hitting him in the arm or throwing books at his head. And this has been pretty recent, like in the last 6 months. So first of all, that's something that I have recognized about myself. So just to say that the learning never stops. You keep digging. Love that. Right? You keep digging. But one of the things that really came clear to me afterwards was that the reason that people are suffering in silence, the reason why statistics for suicide are higher than ever, the reason why people are addicted and numbing with alcohol and prescription. It's okay to prescription medicate, and we actually are in a society now that promotes that. The reason for that is that people are scared to step forward and speak their truth. They're sitting in shame. It could be that they have pasts that don't match what was supposed to happen in their lives, and so they're not accepted by their family, or they've disappointed themselves, or so many things, right? So what I have learned is that we need to have spaces for people to be able to talk about that. So the Uncommon Woman is that. And if there's anything that that movement is, it's a place where women can come in and say anything about anything, and guarantee there will be one person who's like, oh, just so you know, you're not alone. And there's something in that, you know? So that's probably the most important thing of all the things, is just that there's always somebody who has your story, even though you don't think that there is. There just is, but you have to give yourself an opportunity to step into that space, right?
You're so right.
So
I did a webinar last week, and I'm big into vulnerability. I always share my life, my going through divorce and going through family, having family members being imprisoned, and filing for bankruptcy, and all these things that I've been through. And it's just natural to me to share my story, because the one thing that I've learned in my personal journey is that vulnerability is one of the greatest powers and strengths that someone can possess. Where a lot of people see vulnerability as a weakness, I see it as a strength. And I had someone actually reach out to me and send me a message, and they just thanked me because they resonated so much with my story. They felt like they were the only one that had gone through that, and they resonated, and they just thanked me for they made them feel okay,
right, paving the way, right?
That they could relate to someone, and it's so and that's what I love about
that's juicy.
What I love about your movement is everyone has shit, and all shit stinks. It all smells, and it's the truth. I always
speak for yourself.
That. Yeah, roses.
That's a whole other story. That's a whole other Facebook Live.
We'll do that on another Facebook Live.
That's another Facebook Live.
So what I realized is that most of my clientele is female. I have I have a very masculine persona, but I have a very high feminine energy. I'm a very open, emotional person. And what I always stress to all of my female clientele in what they do on social media when I coach them is share yourself. And the one thing is that, what I love about what you're doing is that you are facilitating and you are helping these women peel back those layers that they need to peel back, so they can take those stories and turn them into passion, where they can start to inspire other people to believe in themselves and to realize they're not alone, and you don't have to go down this road alone, because I call it the law of inclusion. People love to be included in something, and when someone doesn't feel alone, just like you said about the statistics, it can end. When people understand that it's okay that you've been through what you've been through, and it's okay that you've been stuck in your story. But every day that we're given is a new day to write a new page in our new book of a new chapter of our life. And that's what I love about what you're doing. So let's go more in depth with the movement. Let's talk about it. When's it happening? And just explain in detail, for someone that doesn't know you, that doesn't know about the movement, what can one expect from that?
Okay, well, the Uncommon Woman is a movement. I mean, it's been growing for about a year now. Even though it was in existence 3 years ago, I didn't do anything really with it because I was still in my own kind of like metamorphosis. But over the last 8 months, I would say the Uncommon Woman movement has really taken life. And we went on tour last year across Canada, and we had a beautiful experience in 4 different cities. But the Seats to Stage program, which is the program that moves women from in the story to on the shoulders of their story, begins on Monday. And the reason that I created that program is that I had 6,000 women in the Uncommon Woman community and 1,500 women in our private Facebook tribe. And all these women have stories. And I was talking about, this is a space for you to not only share your story, but then eventually be able to take your story and turn around and reach out to somebody else and say, I'm one step ahead, but I can pull you up with me, right? And so I was talking about having them share their stories from all the platforms, whether it's a stage or a healing circle or on a podcast or on a Facebook Live. But then they would reach out to me and say, I've always wanted to do that, but I don't know how. And I was like, duh. So I was actually, even though I'm a speaker and I had a speaking coach several years ago and have been public speaking for a long time, I never thought to provide the bridge for them to go from being in the story to on the stage. So actually this past fall in 2018, I ran Seats to Stage for the first time. And I believe, I don't know if Carla's still on here, but Carla Preston was one of the women in the beta, and it was mind blowing. And really, these were all women who came into the program with really powerful stories, like powerful stories, you know, like they have experienced trauma, the kind of trauma that other people are in that they don't want to talk about, or they don't think they'll ever move through it. And what we did was work through the trauma and work through what that now meant to them now, because of course our trauma happened in the past, but often we're still carrying it as if it happened today, right? So what I showed them was that actually they're a different person than they were when that happened, even if it was yesterday or last year. But how has that changed you? You know, what have you learned? What would you do differently? Maybe if you could go back in time prior to that, would you live differently? Would you act differently? Would you be different? Would you have a different belief system? You know, how would you live your life? And so we go through that process. And then when I say, okay, so you're going to take your story and the gifts that you're going to get and that you can give, because, you know, when we get, we can give, is that you're going to take your story and you're going to share with others now the lessons that you've learned. And that in itself is such a healing process. And you can take that and you can share it from any platform on any stage, big or small, anywhere. And so by the time they go through the program, they have clarity in their message and actually what it brought to their lives, right? The courage to step forward, the confidence to speak about it, even though it's really painful still. And then the composure to stand on the stage and share it, because that's the part that people often are scared of. What if I throw up? What if I cry? What if I pass out? What if I forget? And I'll say, you won't. I just promise you won't. So Seats to Stage actually moves the women literally from the seats to the stage so that they can be on the receiving end and then they're on the giving end. And I feel like when we give, it's so healing, and we get, and it's so empowering. Yeah. So that's the program in a nutshell. And that starts on Monday and it's 16 weeks long.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey into your soul and then through your story and out the other side. And you become completely, it's transformative, right? Like you and I both know, because we've both had, now I know more about your story, that when we go through these really painful experiences, in the moment, it's really hard to see that there's anything. And if somebody comes up to us and says, I promise you in 3 months or 6 months, you're going to see the gift. You're going to want to, you know, like take them out at the knees, right? Because that's really just not the thing that you say to somebody when they're in trauma or when they're going through pain.
When they're in the weeds.
Right. So what you can do is say, just let me just help you through. Let me just show you what I did. Yeah. That's all, you know, that's all. And it's amazing what that kind of a loving dialogue and a trusting relationship can do for people. Sometimes they just need somebody to say, I get you. Like, I understand. I get this. And you're actually going to be okay. You might not feel that right now, but I promise you. And I feel like this is going to be a gift that you can give other people, you know. So.
What's your greatest accomplishment personally to date? Personally, not professionally.
This movement. Oh, well, yeah. Okay. So it's funny because this movement is so personal to me because of the promise that I made to God. Right. So I was at a pretty dark time in my life where I was considering suicide, which is something that had never even crossed my mind. And I was like, okay, so here's the task, right? Here's the contract and I'm going to sign it. And so through that, I got myself out of the place that I was in because I just leaned in really hard. And my face was basically gone at that point. I was in my 40s and I just hadn't been practicing. So I have to say that my greatest accomplishment is coming back into myself. Like I was such a different person in 2011 prior to meeting this human being. And he has taught me so much, even though the relationship is over. And it wasn't always a terrible experience, by the way. I would have never been in it, right? But he has taught me so much. And from that, I have been able to come to know myself in such a different way. Like, I'm just such a better human being. So I feel like that's my greatest accomplishment, is that I did the dirty work. You know, I really got raw, and I left with nothing. And I decided that I needed to just figure my own shit out and why I got there in the first place. So
Yeah.
as a personal accomplishment, I would say that just coming to know myself has been a long journey, and I had to step away from a lot of things and people that didn't serve me, and that was painful. Something I didn't have the strength to do before, you know. But once you go through something that's like hell, you realize, oh, I can do without a lot of things and a lot of people, and I'm going to be fine. So that was a huge growth curve for me.
So from all the people that you've been working with and continue to work with, you know, all the women, what is the most common roadblock that you see people have in not just going from seat to stage, but
Yeah.
a lot of these women that are damaged, they're in their story, their self-confidence is low, they're not very sure of they're not sure of themselves. What
Yeah.
have you picked? What have you experienced personally with working with all these women? What roadblock are you seeing a common trait come up?
Actually, you said it, confidence. So women will go through terrible things. I mean, there are women in my community whose children have been raped and then cyber abused, and then they die by suicide. I have women whose children were murdered. I have women who have lost limbs, or, you know, have just terrible, like compound trauma. And they'll say to me, I don't know if anybody wants to hear my story. Okay, now you and I are like, what? Because I
Right.
sit in my seat and I look at them and I think, do you have any idea how much our conversation has just shifted me? Here I am. I had a bad day yesterday because X, Y, and Z. And I was like, am I going to be able to get out of bed today? And then I talk to you and I look at your resilience and the light that you carry and the wisdom that you have. Obviously, you have wisdom within for you to continue to move forward despite how dark things continue to be time after time. Like, there's something about that is, it transcends anything that I've ever experienced. And they'll say, I just don't see it. Right. So it's a confidence thing. And so one of the biggest gifts that the women get when they work with me in Seats to Stage, or even if they just come into the Uncommon Woman tribe, is that they get lifted. Right. So I've recognized that lack of confidence comes from like the wrong dialogues. So as a child, you know, maybe they didn't hear a lot of positive messages, or maybe they did, but there was somewhere in their life where there was like a disconnect.
Yeah.
And they weren't valued anymore. So there's also patterns that go with this lack of self-confidence that I see. So those two things together, I mean, we could have this conversation forever because I've done so many case studies, right? So, but I feel like it's lack of confidence. And that's where I get the most fired up, because the women who I work with are women who I aspire to be. I mean, let's just be honest. You are doing things that I don't know that I could get through. And you don't have the self-confidence? Like, yes, you fire me up to be a better human and to get out of bed every day, because you get out of bed every day despite that.
I love that. So,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, people don't understand and realize the power that they carry, because
You have to be able to stand on the shoulders of your story to see that.
well,
right?
it's having an out of body experience.
Right.
It's coming
Yeah.
out of yourself and looking like, oh my God, look what I've been able to overcome.
Right.
And because what I always tell people is that you have to understand who is looking back at you in the mirror every single morning. And there was a time where I didn't recognize myself when I looked in the mirror, but everyone is always concerned about what others are saying and what others are thinking or what they might feel, but none of that shit matters, because you're the one waking up in your body. You're the
Right.
one that is making the decisions for yourself. But people don't realize how powerful of a story and a message that their life is for someone else that is
Right.
in the weeds, that is not realizing how inspiring they can be for someone else. So let me
Yeah.
ask you this.
Okay.
What's been the most impactful thing about this movement? So, I mean, you've seen a lot of transformations, you've seen a lot of changes, but overall,
Mm.
what's been most impactful to you personally?
Wow.
I'm I'm
Uh,
I'm coming I'm coming with the big questions tonight, Marlo. I'm coming with
yeah, you know what? This is a good
guns
question
blazing.
because I mean, the women in this movement are women that are they're superstars, right? They're incredible human beings. I'm going to tell you something that I wasn't expecting, and it has completely changed. Is my language.
Mm.
So I'm going to give you an example. Leah Parsons, her daughter was gang raped, and then the boys took pictures of the gang rape and put them out on social media
Oh,
and sent them to everybody in the school. So when her daughter Ratea got to high school the next day, everybody in the school had seen pictures of what had happened. Okay.
jeez.
Every teenage nightmare, never mind adult. Okay. Teenage, 14 years or 17 years old. So she died by suicide. She couldn't take it. Those pictures continued to circulate for 17 months until she just was like, I can't do this anymore. So Leah, her mother, is now an advocate for consent, for education around sexual violence, for cyber abuse, for mental illness, and also to get the systems working better in place for these people who are in these positions because the systems failed her. But one of the things that Leah has taught me, and Shannon Miller, whose daughter was stabbed and murdered at a house party, these two women have taught me how to talk about dying and things. So let me use an example. I used to say things like, oh my God, that killed me. I don't use that language anymore. Like, I just am so hyper aware of,
Mm.
and I mean, this is so random, and this is probably something you're like, oh my gosh. Like, I'm
No,
telling
this
you
is
this
this is
because,
like deep. It's really good because understanding your words and your language, like that's,
like,
I mean, that's everything.
I am so thoughtful about how I speak. And I didn't used to be. I never was aware. I was never awake to what the people around me could be experiencing. And so my first conversation with Leah, I said something and she said, oh, I'm just going to tell you, you can't say that. And I was like, what are you talking about? This is my first phone conversation with her. And she told me, and I was like, oh my God. And she said, people have no idea how that triggers. Like if somebody says, throw them under the bus, or, oh my God, that killed me, or I'm dying laughing, that can trigger the person beside you who has experienced trauma
Yeah.
in a way that you have no idea.
Mm.
So I would say that that's one of those blessings and lessons that I had no idea was coming at me. And it has hit me so hard. And so I'm just really, like, when I speak to people now, especially people who are in grief and trauma and experiencing pain, I'm very careful how I use my language. And if I find myself saying something, I'll actually say, I'm really sorry, that was super inappropriate, and I apologize for using that. And I've come to this place now where I have to, like, apologize for me being thoughtless, because our society takes really terrible, tragic things and we make it a joke. We turn
Yeah.
it into humor, and we don't realize the impact that has on the people around us. So there's one, like, crazy out of the blue, but it has completely changed me.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
so as we wrap up, just a couple more
Yeah.
things. So one thing and then one question, and then I'll let you get back to your evening. Um, so how can people, most importantly, get in touch with you personally, find out about the movement, find out about seats to stage?
Seats to stage.
How can people find out about all this, and how can they get involved?
Okay, so I'm really easy to find. I am either Marlo Ellis, or on Instagram and on Facebook, my handles are The Uncommon Woman, and that's the movement, so you can find us there. And I also have a private Facebook tribe, which is a little bit more of an intimate space, called The Uncommon Woman Tribe. And tomorrow, if you're interested in even just getting my top 3 tips to how to move from seats to stage. Like you just want like 3 shots that you can take next week because you're going to be speaking at something. Tomorrow morning, I'm doing a webinar at, oh my gosh, I'm thinking different time zones here. I believe it's 10 a.m. Mountain Standard, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard.
Correct.
And it's a webinar. Yeah, I'm all like, because I just moved recently and then I was in California, so I'm like 3 different time zones. And I'm going to be sharing my top 3 tips on how to move from seats to stage and do it with confidence and clarity. So if people are interested in learning more about that, they can just reach out to me. I'll send them the link for the registration. And other than that, you can follow me or send me a private message if you want to know more about seats to stage. The website should be back up now. It's called theuncommonwoman.com, and you can go work with me. And Seats to Stage is there under programs, I believe. So we just had to do a revamp on it. Yeah. So there's lots. I'm really easy to find, and I always get back to people right away when I get private message. I like to respond.
I love that.
Okay. Easy.
Final question.
Yeah.
There is no right or wrong answer, but I
love these questions.
I ask this question to everybody. So
awesome.
What does success mean to you?
Saving lives.
Okay.
Just saving lives, and not saying that I'm a lifesaver, but if I can, let a woman know that her story matters and that she's not by herself, she just might stick around for another day and might not, step off the ledge, because that was me. And it was just one story that saved me. So that's kind of where success lies for me, is just valuing other lives of other people, I think.
I love that. So everybody that's on here live or on the replay, you know exactly how and where to find Marlo, and please check her out. I tagged her in this video, so please send her a friend request, follow her.
Thank you so much.
Connect with her. And Marlo, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to jump on tonight, share your story, and just share your time with all of us. And again, you and I are both in the same mindset. If this just changed and impacted just one person on here to start thinking just a little bit differently, then we've done our job. So much love and gratitude to you. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for being here. I really honor you. And I know it's Friday, so taking time to be here is just amazing. So thank you so much, Scott. And I hope everybody has an incredible evening. Hope to see you soon. I'll see you.
Bye, Marlo. See you soon.
Bye.
Yes, you will. Bye-bye. So again, as you guys can see, just an amazing human being. And, I love asking people that question about success, because everyone has a different version of what success means to them. And to Marlo, success means saving lives. So each one of us has that same gift to save other people. So I just wanted to thank everyone for coming on tonight, sharing your thoughts, engaging with us, the hearts and everything else. And just remember, each one of us, man, woman, doesn't matter. Each one of us has that same power to make new decisions each day, to change our lives, rewrite our story, and live the best life possible. So guys, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful Friday evening, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.